Hey guys, welcome to the Nerd Continuity. I'm Michael Dambold, along with your host, the amazing and awesome Alex.
Hello,
Uh,
hello.
so today we've got some interesting topics to talk about, and we're going
hmm
to start off with some of the biggest news that's come out. It's the news about Bootstrap 4. And Alex is
Yeah.
amazing because he was able to actually get a hold of the alpha and test it.
Oh
So
yes.
Alex,
I went to Twitter and stole the alpha. No, actually, they released it for free, but as usual. Yeah, I grabbed. Actually, they released Bootstrap Alpha, the version 4, while I was working on my custom CSS framework because I wasn't really satisfied about Bootstrap 3.
Mhm.
And especially I wanted to integrate SAS instead of less, and I wanted to integrate Flexbox instead of like the default grid of Bootstrap. So I was saying, okay, let's do it. Like I'm gonna do it by myself. It's gonna be super fun. And then the day after, Bootstrap released the alpha with, of course, SAS instead of less and Flexbox grid instead of the default Bootstrap grid. So I was okay. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
I started testing it. It's pretty sweet. Like you can see that they basically rewrote everything from scratch. They maintain what was already working, like the component based logic instead of like the single page logic, and they're trying to optimize a lot. I think the crappiest part of Bootstrap 3 was the JavaScript section with like the carousel was pretty horrible, and drop down and tooltips where if you don't follow exactly the structure of Bootstrap, like you're gonna have your tooltip open it at the top left of your page or all over the place. Like it was never properly aligned.
Yeah.
Instead, now they put a lot of effort to improve those parts. And the thing that I really like is the integration of Flexbox. So you have the choice during the customization or even after you download it to import dynamically or the default Bootstrap grid or the Flexbox based Bootstrap grid. And we are kind of in a sweet spot right now because basically they just dropped the support to Internet Explorer 8.
Mhm.
And so Internet Explorer 9 supports a little bit Flexbox, but if you put Modernizer, can do a dynamic rollback, a fallback to support Flexbox. So pretty much we have the green light to use Flexbox, and it will solve a lot of different weird issues.
Mhm.
Overall, it's good. It's still an alpha, so it's super buggy. Don't use it for a production website, but really, I
Yeah.
suggest you to give it a try. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah. And when we talked earlier, I asked you the question about the improved documentation and whether or not that was really true.
uh, Probably it's improved because it's smaller,
Mhm.
but is more complicated to navigate, in my
Mhm.
opinion. Like before, the menu was really easy. It was like everything was separated per logic. Like you have the first section was the grid section, then you have all the components with typography and buttons and stuff. Then you have the JavaScript section where you have the carousel, the drop down, the accordion, all the JavaScript based plugin. Now it's everything together. You have just three separated sections with like introduction, components, and about. That's it. And inside the components section, you have tiny subsections for every single different components. And now everything is together. It's more compact, I think more optimized, but it's a slightly more complicated to navigate. Like probably, I don't know, maybe because I'm used to the current version of Bootstrap, I watched it so many times that now
Yeah.
I'm expecting that experience. But I don't know. It looks less intuitive for me. I don't know.
Mm.
Mm.
Well, it is alpha. I mean,
Yeah.
from some of the stuff that I've read from the Bootstrap blog, it looks like they've really overhauled a lot.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, I mean, I understand that they're saying that they have all new this and all new that. One of their headers, one of their bullet points is we rewrote all of our JavaScript plugins.
Yes.
And that to me is like, oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah,
This is going to
exactly.
be interesting. Because any developer who's ever worked with JavaScript knows that it can be a pain absolute pain to deal
Yeah.
with.
Do you
Um,
remember like upgrading from Bootstrap 2 to Bootstrap 3? It
oh
was
my
like,
gosh,
how
yeah.
many animal sacrifices did you do? Like,
Yeah, well, I mean, it was having to, Bootstrap 2 and to 3, you had to relearn uh,
exactly.
the entire structure. I
Yeah.
mean, the entire syntax of Bootstrap changed, and I
Yeah.
remember being angry. I was angry for maybe about a day because I was reading the new documentation, going, "Why
Yeah.
would they do this?" But it's actually much better. I
Yes.
only, I would never go. I don't ever want to go back to the Bootstrap
No,
2.
no, absolutely.
Not that
What?
anybody, not that I
Yeah.
would, but
No, what they
um,
they think like really good in Bootstrap 3, they completely switch from like Bootstrap 2 showed the internet how to create a properly fluid layout with the
mhm,
grid based on percentages and emphasis and all this stuff. But then Bootstrap 3 introduced the actual responsive part where you have a
yes.
grid that can go from 12 columns to 6 columns based on your browser size, like your window
Mhm.
size or whatever device you're using. So it was a necessary rewriting. And I think also the JavaScript now in version 4, it was a necessary rewriting because the JavaScript of version 3 is just super, super heavy. Like
Mhm.
most of the time, I think like 99% of the time, I just download the Bootstrap grid because I like it, how it's made, how it's easy to create responsive things. And that's it. I don't use any components, any sorts of JavaScript because it's super heavy. Like
Mhm.
it's not really well built. It's good for fast prototyping, but for a production side that you have to optimize and minify it and save as much kilobytes as possible.
Mhm.
Bootstrap JavaScript is blah.
Yeah. Well, and
Mhm.
I also, now that we're talking about it, people have been trying to do a lot of interesting animations
Yeah.
without using Flash, but it's still, now that we're talking about this, I was
Hmm.
thinking, it's still really in its kind of beginning stages because, first of all, especially with doing anything in parallax,
Hmm.
your parallax, anything you use for parallax has to be as small as possible. Like your
Yes.
byte size, your code content, everything
Hmm.
that you do with parallax has to be as optimized as possible, or it's going to, it's not going to be worth it, and
Hmm.
it'll be heavier. And sometimes, it's never going to be as heavy as a Flash file,
Oh yeah.
but it is going to be a problem.
Hmm.
So, I almost feel like I think Bootstrap is helping. I think it's actually giving us somewhat of a net to work
Yeah.
with. I don't believe that the type of JavaScript and jQuery and
Hmm.
CSS animations that people have gotten away with in the past are going to work anymore.
Oh no,
Um,
absolutely.
but that's good because what that is doing is that's forcing us to innovate and to move forward
Yeah.
and to find a new way to show these animations, without it's forcing designers to come up with new ideas, but it's also forcing developers to come up with new and more optimized ways of showing these animations.
Yeah. That's
Because that
right.
the demand for animated and interactive websites that give you a
Hmm.
sense of fluid user experience
Yes.
is not going to go away. It's
Yeah.
going to stay here forever,
Hmm.
and in fact, it's going to increase.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
but the way that we handle it, see, I feel like they're growing pains because for so long everyone just relied on Flash. For
Yes.
almost 10 years,
Yeah.
Flash was the king until Steve Jobs said Flash is dead.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people laughed at him when he said that,
Yeah.
and but it was something that all of us had been really wanting for a very long time.
Yeah, it
He
was.
just
Yeah.
said what the rest of us were thinking,
Yeah.
and he was the first person who had the guts to do it, and people took him seriously because he was Steve Jobs,
Yes, exactly.
and I hope, and he kind of got the ball rolling,
Hmm.
and I think as we see new code and as we see new languages develop in the future, we're going to see much more of more of an integrated language of animation, like
Yeah.
animation being a part of the language instead of
Yeah.
being an add-on.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. You have to think like I'm seeing these transitions right now during like the internal process in my company, while during the early stages of prototyping or like wireframing, we're already thinking of animations and transitions to smooth the experience or like carry the users through pages through this whole animation. So it's not something that maybe last year was like, okay, let's do a website, and then at the end, okay, now let's make it pretty with some transitions and some
Yeah.
animations. It's
Hmm.
not like that anymore. It's everything changed.
Yeah.
The good thing about Bootstrap that it's both good and both bad, really bad, if that when Bootstrap was introduced, gave us basically a base structure of saying like, okay, this is the good web. That's how you make something good. You have a good structure. You have a good solid base to start building. But people like users, especially lazy developers, started using Bootstrap as it was, like without any customization. So the internet, the entire web got sick of Bootstrap in like 3 months. Like all the websites, like 70% of the website was like, oh, this is Bootstrap. Like it was so easy to recognize it because
Yeah.
no one was customized it.
Well, they were using it. I felt like they were using it as a template instead of a boilerplate.
Exactly.
Instead of, it's almost like, I don't know. It just felt well. I went on a rant maybe a few months ago about how all the websites look the same.
Yes.
You have giant photos with white text, and these are. I have to conclude that the people who made these websites are not designers because you never put white text over a black and white photo with pure white in that photo.
Exactly.
And I just don't think these people, I mean, I can only conclude, and so does everyone else, I'm assuming, who looks at this website. If you can't read the logo and if you can't read the text in that top little parallax part where it's a giant photo and then there's this, like, I don't know, a sunny day,
Yeah.
where you're seeing shadows from a tree,
Yeah.
and then half of the text is occluded
Yeah.
by the white, or the black. And you're not, I don't know, it's almost as though technology, for some people, I feel like technology has progressed to the point where you cannot get away with stuff anymore.
Exactly.
And you can't get away with fudging it. And these people are fudging it. And I'm even seeing this in gallery website and lists. People are saying, top 10 big photo websites, but half of them are absolutely atrocious because the people are not using the elements and principles of design.
Exactly.
They're not trying to contrast anything. They're not trying to make anything look nice or have anything stand out. It's all turning into a jumbled mess.
And something that you notice in Bootstrap 4, like it's way less ready to go out of the box.
Yes.
Before, like Bootstrap 2 was coming out of the box with pre-made templates that you could put on top, and it was okay. Now the Bootstrap 3 is like just has one template that is the default of Bootstrap. Bootstrap 4 now is basically comes with a pre-made color scheme, and that's it. No template. Right. No like fancy drop shadows or like gradients on buttons, like super flat everything. So it's a boilerplate. Like you start from that and then you build on top, but you don't use it as a, okay, that's it, it works, and I don't have to put any thoughts on this because it's already made it. No.
Right. And I almost get Well, I almost get the impression that the people who were developing Bootstrap saw what happened.
Oh yeah.
And said, "Oh, we need to not be the ones who caused this."
Exactly.
And they made it more. They didn't make it more difficult. They just made the code a little more advanced, and they removed the training wheels. Because honestly, this is Bootstrap 4. At this point, you should at least know the basics if you're getting into Bootstrap.
Yes, exactly.
And you can't go anywhere else. So, I mean, well, you can make static sites, but they're going the way of the dinosaur. Why would you even?
Yeah.
I mean, you can kiss your business goodbye if all of your if you're not even considering moving into Bootstrap.
Yes.
I mean, if you have a website that no one is ever going to see, or you have a website for, I don't know, something, like I don't know, a research facility that they don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's responsive or not, that would be the only thing that I can think of, because people who need to access these websites need to access them from iPads, Android tablets, phones, you name it.
And there's only like one thing that I personally use it, and I kind of like, I'm okay to not customize Bootstrap at all. If you have to build an intranet, or you have to build a administration panel for your own company. So that is okay.
Yes, I actually, I would recommend not doing Bootstrap at that point.
Yeah.
Only because the only people who are going to access that are via desktop computers.
Yes.
And that, to me, that's kind of an intranet. in any kind of admin panel
Yeah.
usually is I believe, for especially for a larger company or like a
Yeah.
medical company or a hospital, I really don't believe the time needs to go into making that responsive, because most of the integrated third party software
Mm-hmm.
companies that make the content and the
Yeah.
software for like a hospital,
Yeah.
they're not going to invest in any kind of mobile development
Yeah.
because you're not
Absolutely.
supposed to access your patient's files on your phone.
Yeah.
So that's in kind. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I'm glad you brought that up because
Mm-hmm.
it almost seems like it's a completely different set of rules
Yeah.
when it
Exactly.
comes to internet versus internet. And
Exactly.
that's one of the things I ask people. It's is your site going to be public facing?
Yeah.
Because if it
Exactly.
is, we need response. If it isn't, we don't really need to worry about
Yeah.
it yet.
Exactly. And speaking about Flash, we were talking about it before.
All right, so the news is Google Chrome is beginning to block Flash, which is
Woohoo!
music to our ears.
Oh god,
we
yes. Well,
we
not
have been
completely. Like it will
not
block
well,
like pretty much ads that are not
yeah,
safe, and they could like put some like backdoor inside your website or whatever. But it will keep open like video players and some ads. Like
yes. Well, from what
yeah,
it's auto playing Flash ads. So really,
yeah,
the whole those ads that are Google ads saying doctors hate her,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they show a picture of guacamole and then a woman with like avocado on her face or something.
yeah.
Like this woman is 753 years old. you
She's
know.
immortal thanks to
Yeah.
avocado. Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Uh,
works. Yeah,
yeah. And it was initially rolled out to a beta version of Chrome earlier this year.
yeah,
And Ars Technica actually has a really good article on this. It has all of
yeah.
the details, but it's really nice. It will be nice for end users
Yes.
mostly. So if you're searching the internet and you're looking through it, you're not going to have as many flashing, annoying ads
Hmm.
as you had. And I remember several times hearing stories of people actually getting infected. Their browsers and their computers were being infected with malware because they were downloading without knowing it.
Like Flash
Flash ads were
games. Yeah.
playing, and they were
Yeah.
shoving in all of this bad
I
code
remember.
through it.
That
Yeah,
happened to me too. Like when I had I don't know, a Pentium 3, I remember. Like early stages of the internet, I was like, oh, let's download these amazing Flash games. And then
yeah. Oh
boom,
gosh, all those. Yeah, back in the
destroyed
days.
my computer. Like,
Yeah,
what was that? The thing that
yeah,
is like, it's kind of weird, and it's yeah, I was impressed by these statistics that in this article that you mentioned about Ars Technica said that a recent report for a mobile and management agency said that in the first quarter of 2015, 5.35 billion of Flash ads were submitted
yeah.
and were still in use compared to the 4.25 billion of HTML5 ads. So,
That's billion with a
yes,
B.
billion. Yeah, fucking a lot. Like, okay, Google Chrome is going to start blocking the ads, but people are not ready. Like, we didn't hear, like you were saying, Steve Jobs 10 years ago saying, hey, Flash is dead. Let's switch from that to HTML5. People didn't listen. Like, it was like, no, I'm gonna keep going
Yeah,
my Flash ads and my Flash websites. Like,
yeah.
sometimes I actually find some entirely Flash made websites
Oh,
for
dude, I
like,
found a Flash website. Okay, so this guy, I'm probably mispronouncing his name, but it's Lamal. It's the guy who's saying Neverending Story.
oh yeah,
His website's
Lamal.
completely Flash. I mean, completely.
Yeah, and it
As far
looks
as I can
like a
tell.
table based on
Yeah,
Dreamweaver. So good
yeah,
use of Flash.
yeah. And, I look at that and I look at these entertainers going, "Oh my gosh, did he pay someone to?" He may have paid someone like in '98 to build his website,
Yes.
but that's from the attitude of I built a website, 20 years ago,
Hmm.
and I don't need a new one, and it's based on like HTML. I don't know,
Yeah.
like it's not even HTML5. It's not even close to HTML4. So, because I've actually come across a few of those sites, a few sites where you look up, you do the view source code,
Hmm.
and you see this. I mean, you see these comments, and it's
Yeah.
just like, what year is it? So,
Yes.
and speaking of all of this, speaking of
Yeah.
browsers, uh,
Hmm.
let's talk about let's talk about Microsoft Edge. The
Do we have to?
yeah, yeah.
Did you use it?
The beautiful no. Well, I tested something. I tested it out this last week actually. I finally
Oh.
got around to it. Upgraded my computer at work to Windows 10.
Oh.
Um, but I remember hearing that there are no plugins and there
Yeah,
are no extensions.
it's
Nothing. It's just
it's
I
bare
don't know what.
bones. Like
Yeah,
it's just so basic. There's pretty much
well,
nothing, and everything is integrated with Cortana. Like right
yeah.
click and has to Cortana to search the web with Bing. You won't have any
With Bing,
results that make sense.
with Bing.
Yeah,
Let's underline that with Bing.
Bing. Yeah, exactly.
The thing that
Well.
lost me in the last Spider-Man movie was that he used Bing. I'm like, really? Is that what the teenagers are using? Because that would be
Yes.
the depreciation of our
Yes, of
abilities.
course.
I just, I don't know. I just, well, there's an article on Web Designer Depot about
Yeah.
this week, and it was very interesting.
Mhm.
They try to be very diplomatic about it, but
Oh,
there's a
yeah.
quote that says, "Under the hood, Edge is very much IE 12," and that's not nice. That's not a,
That's a
you know,
whiplash.
yeah. I
Like,
mean, the CSS support in Edge is 6% better than IE 11, but that's a one-digit number, and
yeah.
that's not. I mean,
And like the article says, is the same improvement ratio from IE 10 to IE
yeah,
11, like 6 fucking%. And they say we rebuilt Edge from scratch. We built Edge like Project Spartan. We're building like something completely new from scratch. No, it's not true. You're using the same crappy base core of Internet Explorer that it cannot support after 10 years of development, cannot support transitions without putting dash ms dash transitions on top, and also without using modernizer, otherwise the transition won't work. It's just why I don't understand why. What are they doing?
yeah. Well, and I found one thing in the article says is there's a website called caniuse.com, which I think
Yeah.
should be the holy grail for all web
Oh
developers.
yes.
It's this beautiful, beautiful little website that only functions to show whether or not specific code will be supported by
Hmm.
X browser, and it's much better than the cross-browser test. I mean, if you want to do cross-browser testing, there are other ways to do it. But if you just have a question about something,
Yeah.
especially if you're designing for something and your boss says, "Hey, does this work in Edge?" you can go there instead of having to figure it out the hard way.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the article also says that Edge only supports 75% of what Chrome offers,
Yeah.
and it does not support the picture element.
Why?
It's like, I mean, you
Why?
can use
Like,
source set, but it's not. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's almost. I feel like they're wanting to say yes, we kind of support HTML5, but not really. Like we
Yeah,
don't really like you.
that's something that like it does it for me. Does it totally make sense? Like Microsoft is losing a lot on every field. Like it's losing hardware, is losing from software, is losing from internet, is losing from games. Also, Xbox was kind of a major failure at the
Oh, it
Xbox
was a
One
major.
compare.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was compared to PS4. So why Microsoft doesn't understand what's wrong? Like every user is saying, anyway, we cannot use Internet Explorer because it doesn't support HTML5 and the web is coding in HTML5. So Microsoft, instead of saying, okay, let's take like our 20,000 developers or maybe more that we have, and let's build just a single support of HTML5. Let's not integrate stupid search on Cortana dynamic or like download dynamic, like multiple files, but just with a single key shortcut or whatever. Just add a single support of HTML5. Why they cannot focus on the important things and they keep bullshitting around?
Well, and it's interesting because that same line of questioning happened whenever the new Xbox came out, versus PS4. Now, PS4 dropped the mic at E3.
Yeah.
Because it offered. See, the thing was, PS4 improved on the features that people were asking for.
Yeah.
They were asking that certain features be improved. PS4 said, "We'll do that, and we'll one-up you, and we'll give you this too." That's good. That's really good, and people loved it. But the avid Xbox supporters, who up until that point in time did not have a reason not to like or believe that Microsoft was going to put out a secondary product, was saying, Well, just wait until Microsoft's going to come out with something amazing, and
Yeah.
it's going to blow PS4 out of the water. PS4 say your prayers. And then they came out, and not only did they not listen to people, they made it nearly impossible for some users to even use the Xbox One
Exactly.
because it had to be logged in all the time. It had to
Yeah.
have internet. People who are deployed overseas says, "I can't use Xbox One. What do you say?"
Yeah.
And then they started giving flippant answers like, "Well, I don't know, find the internet or something." It was
Nice.
just the attitude was, and I'm not quoting them directly, but it was that attitude of, well, you just need to play our way or just don't buy it. And I
Yeah.
think at one point someone just started inferring that they needed to just go with PS4 if they didn't like Xbox One. And now,
That is
granted, the person
terrible.
they hired to handle that was a very bad thing to say about your own product,
Yes.
or to infer that PS4 is in any way better.
Hmm.
But what happened? But that was the difference between companies that are listening to the users, companies that are listening. That's one good thing I do have to say about Adobe is Adobe does very listen a lot
Yeah.
to people's complaints, and they do really work hard to try to really improve the user experience
Hmm.
in most of their programs, um,
Most of the time.
most of the time. And so because I know if anybody listened to this last time, I know we did a lot of some
Yeah, we
Creative
put
Cloud
some.
bashing, but I mean Mozilla, Chrome is okay, and
Yeah.
Adobe are really good at listening to the users.
Yeah.
Mozilla is really good.
Oh, Mozilla base
Mozilla's
is entire business on users, and
yeah.
like I would really love to use Mozilla and my default browser, but it's I hate sometimes how heavy is on specific transitions and is not as
Yes.
smooth internet experience. It's not as smooth experience on specific websites, especially when I'm developing. Like the developer
Yes.
inspector of Chrome is so much better.
I
I'm
yeah, I agree.
sorry, but it's so much better.
Yeah.
Like
No, I
you can
totally
see that it's made from developers for developers.
yes. And I usually develop, and most of the people that I know develop with Chrome
Yeah.
because the developer tools are so good, and it's a really solid it's a really solid browser.
Yeah, exactly.
The only time, some people talk about how, there are complaints online about how much RAM
Yeah,
Chrome takes up, but it's not Chrome that's taking up the RAM, it's the extensions people are downloading.
exactly.
The extensions developed by third-party users.
Yeah.
And those people may, and that's kind of the general rule of the internet. If a user creates something, you don't always have a guarantee that they're going to
Hmm.
optimize it.
Hmm.
They may just put all, instead of trying to run, it's like running a bunch
Yeah.
of, having 10 separate CSS style sheets
Yeah.
versus running the whole thing through SAS, where you
Exactly.
have everything optimized,
Mm.
and so, and maybe the browser's having to go through 10 different style sheets, many of which have the same rules, for the same class. Sometimes it's usually the extensions that I found that eat up the RAM, but as long as you're smart about it,
Yeah.
it's much easier.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so to
And if you
speak.
don't open like 20,000 tabs at the same time, so
Yes, that
maybe.
too. But I think that's true for most browsers. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, exactly.
I need someone who had he had so many browsers open in his computer that you couldn't tell which browser was which.
Yeah.
And he said, "That's just how I work." I'm like, "How do you
That's
work?"
my workflow. You're destroying my workflow. No, that's not
I
a
was like, "How do you
workflow. That's
tell what's
just,
what?" And he was like, "Oh, I just know." I'm like,
this is just a
"Okay,
shitstorm. So
cool."
at the end of the day, like Microsoft Edge sucks. But we can
I
say
think we should
that.
just
Like,
stop expecting it. I think we should just stop expecting it to be anything other than IE.
yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
I think the
It's
rebrand, you can't repackage. No, I'm not going to end that. But
the thing is
it's
also that
repackaged.
it's weird that if you try to use actually Edge as your default browser, you notice that a lot of things are missing. Like it looks it really looks like a newly fresh made product because it misses so much compared to the other browsers that you say, oh, this functionality is not there yet because they just started like coding this thing, so it's just super new. But then you realize that it acts and reacts in the exact same way of Internet Explorer. So or the developers are so stuck in that environment that even if they create something new, they do the same mistakes,
Well, and I'm not
or
sure it's the developers.
yeah,
It
or
could be
like the
the company.
manager, exactly, like
Yeah.
managers or like the actual CEO said, no, let's use the Internet Explorer core
Yeah.
because I don't want to spend billions of dollars on redoing everything from scratch. But the fact is they still losing it. And they try to do a sneaky thing, like maybe this part will help us transition to the next argument, that they did a sneaky thing in Windows 10, that before in Windows 8, 7 or whatever, to change the browser to default, you have to just download a new browser. After you open it, you have the pop-up and you can check, yes, I want this Google Chrome as my default. Now you have to manually go inside settings and another like sub-level settings, scroll down through all the bottom of the settings and deselect or select another browser. So like Google Chrome and Mozilla like were complaining publicly against Microsoft, like you specifically put the browser switching options 2 more clicks away compared to the previous version of Windows. They're doing this on purpose to avoid people to change the browser. So what the hell?
Well, speaking of Windows issues, it's the whole idea that Windows gave us Windows 10 instead of Windows 9. I think by thinking that they were going to skip a version, that they were going to kind of fool us into thinking that this is not only better,
Yeah.
it's 2 times better. And,
yeah, that was the idea.
Mac has decided to just stop. Apple just decided to stop giving its OS as a number.
Yeah.
And now we're getting Yosemite and now El Capitan.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know what they were thinking, but it's kind of the whole branding process of Microsoft at this point.
Yeah.
Is trying to recover everything and saying, oh, we acknowledge that our brands were so bad that we have to put new names and new logos and new wrapping on everything.
Yeah.
But I will say, though, that, they put a lot of thought into Windows 10, and I love Windows 10 on my work computer, on my i9. It's great. It's very solid.
Yeah.
I have not experienced an OS that solid since XP.
Oh, wow.
Now, granted, I haven't run into any major issues, but it's not giving me the trouble that the previous Windows version
8,
gave me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually think on that one I had Windows 7 because I wouldn't touch Windows 8.
Oh, yes.
I hated Windows 8 so much. I think I had Windows 7 put on there. But even so, it would still give me a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And but I haven't had, this is still early on, so we haven't had any updates or anything like that yet. So, but it's been much better to use. I enjoy it more than I did.
Did you spend a lot of time customizing during the installation?
It's not particularly. It just needed to be I turned off everything that I thought was extraneous.
Yeah.
Anything that would cut into my workflow, because I do video and web development and animations and other stuff. And so I need as much free space and as much free RAM as possible. So I don't really have I don't have a lot of bells and whistles on that one. But I do have Windows 8 on my laptop, and I have the minimal set of everything on my laptop, and it's buggy as crap. I mean, it's just annoying, so annoying. So compared to Windows 7 on my old computer and Windows 8 on my laptop, Windows 10 has been wonderful.
Yeah.
So I'm much happier with it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I believe I have a Yosemite on my MacBook Air, so which is also really sweet. But I mean, Apple hasn't really given us a bad. To my memory, I don't remember an OS particularly being anywhere near as bad as 8.
Oh my God! No,
it was
never.
I don't know what 8 was. It was like I don't know.
Something wrong happened.
Loaded down. It was incredibly loaded down.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Windows 10, speaking of privacy issues, and most specifically the privacy issues with setting up Windows 10, and what we talked about earlier was, this is not the first time an OS has come out that tracks your movements.
Yeah, exactly.
But also that you can opt out on.
Yeah.
People don't seem to understand that if you opt out, of these tracking options, that you will opt out of them, and they won't do it.
Yeah.
And not really. But this has been around since, I believe Yosemite started the whole tracking thing with their
actually,
OS.
if people start thinking about it slightly, every time you freaking use Siri to ask a silly question, that voice, your command, your question is recorded and sent to Apple, and it's permanently stored there with your location, with your time, with whatever was in your cell phone. So like all these privacy issues that are popping out now from Windows 10 is just because Windows and Microsoft especially weren't that good on hiding these things. Like that's the major issue, because like you said, like if you spend some times on the settings during the installation or during like the customization of your OS, you can disable specific things. The shitty things about Windows that if you disable too many things about privacy, then you cannot use a lot of functionalities of Windows, because everything is connected to harvesting your data and your info and sending reports to Microsoft. But it's something that it needs balance, and it's clear, it's obvious. Like Android is doing this, Apple is doing this, Google, every time you do a research, is doing it. Facebook is the major evil in every house. Like Facebook knows everything about you, and you cannot delete your profile of Facebook. So all these privacy concerns about Windows 10 are kind of, yeah, I agree, but it's kind of silly that now everyone is so upset.
Right. And it's like people were freaking out about Amazon Echo when it came out.
Oh, yeah.
Thinking that, it's going to record everything you do. Well, your phone already does that.
Yeah.
And
your television
if you have a smartphone,
already does that.
Yeah.
Your smart TV.
Most of these, and now people are thinking that this is going to some secret database where people are doing horrible things while listening to you, looking at your data. But that's not true. It's actually going to a database that's storing and reorganizing and telling other databases to do certain things based on the data that it receives.
It's just everything is made for advertising, like to give you the product that you probably will need and you will end up buying. It's just to sell you stuff. Like, especially like there's a guy that I follow on Tech Syndicate. I follow a channel on YouTube, and this guy Logan said something about Windows 10 and Facebook and all these like kind of free products. It's really true. Like if a product is free, it means that you and your information are the product. So
yes,
that's it.
Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah, exactly.
And privacy advocates are really concerned about certain things, and I think there was a freak out whenever people started realizing with Amazon Echo that Alexa actually learns from your requests.
Yeah.
That is also dealt with via databases, because they begin to realize, the databases record your information and from that derive possible answers. There was even recently a Turing test given to one of the to an artificial it was an artificial life form, basically, if you want to call it that. I was reading about it actually last night. They were asking it questions, and it would take answers from the internet. And of course, it started answering questions in an incredibly creepy way.
Yeah.
Saying, the robot started telling the guy, "You're nice. I'll be nice to you. Even if I become the Terminator, I'll be nice to you and put you in a human zoo and think about you for old time's sake."
Oh my God.
That's insanely disturbing. That is insanely disturbing. But if you know where this guy's getting this thing is getting its information from, it's aggregation. It's like Huffington Post talking to you.
Exactly.
So, and the stuff that's on Huffington Post.
Yeah, that's an article about
or the Breitbart report, or one of those content aggregator like Reddit.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's like you having having
a conversation with Reddit.
It's terrifying.
It's terrifying.
It's like you look at all these. It's gathering all of this aggregated data and then putting it together in a pre-programmed way.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's terrifying, but all of our fears about AI are online.
Exactly.
So, like specifically the idea of a human zoo. I can't tell you how many times I've heard of that. It probably came from Reddit. So do I believe this thing is actually intelligently real? No, I don't believe that it's going to pass the Turing test.
Yeah.
But I think that what's happening is that we're freaking ourselves out at this point with our capabilities.
Yes.
That's why Elon Musk and several others are maybe Stephen Hawking are campaigning the UN to make like laws and making the US trying to campaign the US to make laws against artificial intelligence in drones and in
Yeah.
military DARPA mechanisms,
Yeah.
basically, saying that they don't want machines to think they want humans to always operate machines
Hmm.
in war, just in case the machine backfires and destroys an entire village of innocent people.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Something that never happened with a human
ex- ex-
in charge, right?
right, but they want someone to blame if
Exactly.
if they do it.
That's a human
So
mistake.
they want human accountability,
Yeah.
And I think they're I think we're just freaking ourselves out. I think at this
Yeah,
point.
it's well,
But,
rolling back to to Windows 10.
yeah,
We went out of track. But if you want to use specific things for free, you have to pay. Like even if it's free, you have to pay. It doesn't exist free. Like
yes,
even open
it's like the
source.
free to play games.
Exactly, like freemium.
Right.
That's like that's the new thing. But
Yeah.
and also like you have the ability, like the sketchy things about Windows 10 that you don't really have control is like the new way of updating the operating system. Now, like Windows said, we're not gonna do new versions anymore. We're gonna just like release updates once in a while. But the problem is that they decided to use real users to test this update. So they're going to release specific updates to a specific branch of users. So they release a version to a branch of another version to another, and they release like this chunk of updates before releasing to more and more and more users, and then make them globally release. And so they actually use users to test the updates before releasing to the actual public, like completely for free. And this is kind of shitty in my opinion, because if you're using your machine in a production environment, like for work, and then you get an update and you trust this update because, oh, Microsoft is releasing a new update for the operating system, is gonna get things better, and it maybe has some bug or destroys your machine, that is not good. But
yeah, when I think that's setting it up for a class action lawsuit.
exactly. And
you can prove that.
yeah, and a lot of users, I don't know how true is this thing, but a lot of users are complaining that even if they disable like the automatic updates, if you're not careful when you restart your computer, Windows is going to do the updates anyway.
I've heard of that. I've heard of that.
I
happening.
didn't test that, so I'm not sure if it's true, but could be true. And if it's
I
true,
might
this is
test it.
shitty. This is really sketchy. Like that's something that it's like, so you're not really giving me the choice. Like that's I think that's the basic of the privacy issues. Like if I'm telling you, if you use this product, I'm gonna use your first and last name and send information to my company to sell you stuff, I'm fine. You're telling me this and I can check, no, I don't want this, but I'm not gonna use your software. If you're telling me something and you do the opposite, like it means that I don't have a choice, and that is sketchy, and that is it's annoying.
Right.
So
Right, and I think I hope that eventually they start changing their company policies to not do that anymore, because that's ridiculous, especially for those of us who work in any kind of development environment. We need everything to work. We need and a lot of times we're under the gun, and if you're under the gun and you have a project deadline, and all of a sudden you wake up one morning and your computer's like, oh, I don't work anymore, sorry.
exactly.
Then
that was terrible. Like that's why I kind of I'm trying to get away to Apple products because of all the sketchy things that they're doing, and all the factories in China and all these things, and their products are overpriced. It's just like fashion and things.
Oh, of course.
But the main problem is that if you have a business and you're investing some money and you want a computer, you want a piece of machine that you have to be sure is going to work for at least 6 years, and every morning you turn it on and it will turn on without smashing completely your work, you have to go for Apple. I'm really sorry to say that, because I'm building my custom computer. I want to turn into Linux for everything productivity wise, but if you have a business, you can't trust Windows, you can't trust Linux, you can't trust what other operating system we have. Like, I don't know.
Well, and I think in general, I get the impression that what Windows is doing, like with what you said, is a temporary thing. I don't think it's going to work, and I think
Hmm.
they're trying. I get the impression that Windows is trying to figure out their way. um,
Yes.
in this new, they're trying to figure out a new business model, and I think
Yes.
eventually they're going to settle down because people will, people will make a fuss. We will see stories on Ars Technica, The Verge, and
Hmm.
Gizmodo
Yeah.
of these horror stories of what happened. But I think Microsoft's eventually going to. I feel like they're just trying to reset themselves, and eventually they're going to find a sweet spot.
Yes.
And I think eventually they're going to settle down. They're going to be okay for businesses. I mean, granted, we're talking about the worst case scenarios, but I don't think that's in the long run going to be. It's not in Microsoft's best interest to do stuff that's going to hurt them on a large scale.
Yeah.
So I think eventually they're going to settle for a sweet spot, and we're going to be okay. I don't think Windows is going to self-destruct. I think it's just. I feel like I'm seeing this company go through growing pains, as large as it
Oh
is.
my God. Yeah.
Trying to rebrand itself and trying
Yeah.
to do that, and yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
think
so
we.
questions,
I want to create a jingle for our questions, but
questions, ding ding. That's
ding
it.
ding ding, question time, ding ding ding, like adventure time of questions. But
There you
anyway,
go.
so I had an interesting question on. So I wrote an article, a blog post on my website a while ago, like I think 6 months ago, about Adobe Brackets. Brackets is this open source code editor for front end developers. So it's just strictly for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's pretty sweet. It's like super lightweight, full of extensions. You can write your own code to integrate. And the good thing that this code editor is built in actually is built in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So you can access the source code and change it as it was a website. So you have complete customization in it. It's open source, so you can access the source code and do whatever you want. And I was like, I did a positive kind of blog post. I'm pretty impressed about it. It's really new, so it's like version 1.4. It doesn't have a lot of important functionality, but it's a good start, and it's nice seeing Adobe investing on open source. And then a user wrote me questions that it wasn't actually a question but a complaint. Like it was like, I read your post about brackets. I tried it and it sucks. You can't design with it. Like, I don't understand why no one can come up with a simple graphic type artwork based website design program. I was like, first, like, I never said that brackets was a design program.
Yeah.
It's a front end
Right.
development.
It's not.
And the other thing, this user said, like, my workflow sucks. Like, my workflow, it's so like painful, like developing website, because I have to create the website in Illustrator, import it in Photoshop, export the slices, and then create tables in Dreamweaver.
We swear, guys, this post is from 2015 and not 1995.
Yeah, I got this message like
or 2005.
3 days ago, not from 2001. Like a time, there was a time traveling distortion in the sending us this email, and I got this email from the past. But
Yeah.
what the hell is going on here? I understand that it's hard to find a software that can do both design and it's ready for development. There's something out there, like there's Macaw that has a nice CSS HTML conversion. You can design with the web in mind and then export a pre-made HTML page. Or there's Sketch that creates the CSS code every time you design something. But the problem is that the workflow that this user is using is just so outdated and so wrong in so many levels that I bet you're super upset and super frustrated.
Well, yeah. I mean, what I used to when I was in college, they taught us to create everything in Photoshop or Illustrator, slice it out, and then put it online. Via the slices. And but that was 2005 when I was in college.
Yeah.
And that was perfectly normal. It was fine.
Yeah,
at the time,
CSS wasn't supported by anyone, and it was terrible doing
Right.
anything with CSS. So
Exactly. But then, when I graduated, I learned CSS and HTML and all of that. And the thing is, you cannot make a meaningful website by using training wheels. And Illustrator is, I actually do my mockups in Illustrator because everything is vector based and I have total control over everything.
Exactly.
I understand that some people create their mockups in Photoshop, but I to this day do not understand why. Because Photoshop is for photos.
Yeah.
It is a photo editing program.
Yeah, it should
and
be
regardless
separated.
of how much stuff has been tacked onto it and Creative Cloud,
Yeah.
it's still a photo editing program.
Yes.
So this is my work. So my workflow is, if I'm depending on what, sometimes I'll just code a mockup. But if they're the type of person that really wants to see everything before we do a lick of code, which everyone I know, we all have those clients.
Yeah.
And we all have people that we deal with who want to see that. Sometimes it's just faster. Like I can make an Illustrator mockup in 30 minutes.
Yes,
it's very
exactly.
simple. Make it simple. Edit the photos in Photoshop. Put those edited photos into Illustrator.
Yeah.
Have multiple layers. Easy, super easy.
Yeah.
And then just save a JPEG and then send it out and say, what do you think of this?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if they like it or don't like it, then I code from scratch.
Yes.
After and I don't even man, the only slices that I ever make are the photos that we add, but even then you make multiple versions.
Yeah. Why you're not using tables? That's so good.
God.
Come on. Why you're not using Dreamweaver tables pre-made?
Why aren't you using Dreamweaver MX?
Yeah, so good.
Flash MX. That was 2005, wasn't it? It was Flash MX was like Flash 7.
Probably. I think Macromedia was something still there.
See, Adobe is great for the conceptual stage of projects.
Yes.
Now, sometimes I'll just code something and give it to someone.
Yeah.
But if it's going to be very visually heavy and they really need to see it, there's nothing wrong with that. Then I'll create it in Illustrator and then show them. Or if it's something that we have to show multiple people, it's much easier to show them something, because there's no point in spending a few hours coding a website that people are going to hate.
Oh, absolutely.
If you don't even know how the website is going to look, they can't decide on a template or like the idea of whether or not they want the photo on top or they want a photo at all, or they want, there's no point in actually making something like making a spec art website.
Yes.
Versus Illustrator. Illustrator to me is keeping spec art at a minimum, because all we're doing is sending them a JPEG. We're not actually building billable hour work.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And that's what I do. Personally, is if someone wants a website, I make a mock-up first, because I'm not doing spec art and making them a site first.
No, it's insane.
So Adobe is great for conceptual, but once you get into development, everything else has all of your development stuff has to kick in.
Yeah.
And Adobe becomes minimal and nothing else other than exporting.
Exactly.
The stuff you want, and that's it. But even then, you don't export a green menu bar. You don't do that, and you don't export pictures of your menu options.
Why not?
It's so easy. That's what CSS is for.
So good.
That's what CSS is for.
But how do you do gradients and text shadows? Sorry, I'm being a dick right now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry if you're listening to this podcast. I'm so sorry. But it's funny.
No, it's funny. I see it though. I see people wanting to use, what was it? I came across a site recently that was all one image. Everything on the site, including the menu, including everything. Everything. It was like they saved a picture and put it online.
God.
And then they hot linked it. They hot linked the areas.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. It was like this unicorn of websites. And I was like, oh, what year is this? This is 1998.
That's the perfect cross-browser experience.
Yeah. That's something that I did when I first started out. I didn't know any better.
Yeah, exactly.
Like 10 years ago.
You're sure that it's going to look exactly the same in Internet Explorer, in Edge, in Chrome, in Safari?
There was no... Obviously, these people had no SEO presence.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure people looked at that and was like...
Why not?
Nope. Fail. F minus.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. I can't believe that somebody actually did that. It was... we all did stupid stuff when we started.
Do you think they did it seriously or like as a joke? Like
I think they did this. It was serious. It was serious.
Oh shoot.
Yeah, I can't give any more details about it.
Yeah, no, don't.
But
let's not put more shit.
I
Okay.
was like, wow, I'm looking at a unicorn, Pegasus, something like on the cluster right
Pegasus.
now. It's like, can I take a photo of it? If I take a photo of it, is it going to be blurry? Like,
Yeah.
it was the shortest little piece of code. It was like the shortest little like
Image.
yeah. It was just like image source this end
Great.
hot link map positions, and that was it.
That's real code optimization. That's minified HTML.
It's the future.
That's HTML7.
Hey, God,
We are
I
being
don't even know what
such a
HTML7 is going to look like.
such a couple of
That's
douche right now, but it's fine. It's fine.
HTML7 is going to just be downloaded directly into your brain.
Oh yeah, probably.
It's like we'll all be cyborgs at that point. So, well, and because HTML5 isn't even going to be accepted by the W3 until like 2024 or something.
Yeah, it's
It's
HTML5 is in development since like the early 2000. Like in 2001, there was introduced the concept of HTML5 and different markups like aside and structure and like header markup, footer markup, all this stuff. But
yeah.
the integration is so slow, and of course with like Flexbox is starting being used like today, and Flexbox was a thing in 2005. Everyone was like, oh, Flexbox is so good, why I cannot use it? Because it's not supported anywhere, like, and it's not gonna be for at least another 10 years. And it's like
Yeah.
okay, so that's good. Let's make our life more complicated.
Yeah. Well, and I think the good thing by 2024 we will have all moved on to HTML6. By the
Yeah,
time
probably like
HTML5
internet
is approved.
Yeah, internet will be a entire network of brains instead of network of computers.
And
Like
I actually dare predict that the next HTML or the next few sets of HTML is going to be some sort of hybrid code that will integrate more seamlessly with JavaScript. JavaScript may actually take a backseat.
oh yeah,
Pure JavaScript, because
Yes.
people have always hated it, and people who are JavaScript aficionados go, "Well, you people just aren't intelligent enough."
yeah,
Well, that doesn't help. It's not that people aren't intelligent enough. People that I know who deal with C+ and C# hate JavaScript.
yes, I know.
So
it's a different logic.
it's not an issue of being stupid. It's an issue of JavaScript just not being the best.
Yeah,
And jQuery is nice. I like jQuery, and I know it's based on JavaScript, but it's still, I would prefer using jQuery over JavaScript.
oh
if
yes.
possible.
Well, it's more compact.
I think most of us would.
There's more consistency in their results. Like if you create an array in JavaScript, you could have a completely different results. Depends on how you use your array. If you create an array in jQuery, that array is consistent every way because it's an array. Like JavaScript, the problem with JavaScript is like it's been used for 20 more years and it's completely fallback ready. So you can code with JavaScript 0.1 and it still works with your JavaScript library. But the problem is you have all the bugs and inconsistency of all the previous versions of JavaScript. And like you say, like I'm already seeing this, like I'm experimenting a little bit with AngularJS, and I'm seeing that AngularJS, yes, you have your JavaScript libraries to create your code and call your all the data and stuff, but your templates, HTML templates, are based on data attributes. So you call your functions inside the HTML with an HTML attribute. And so the amount of JavaScript that you see in your actual templates is basically zero because everything is separated and you call the dynamic functions inside the HTML without writing JavaScript.
Okay, I've got a question. I have a question from Tim Jankwitz from Twitter. He asks, why does everything look better when you put it in a circle? And he's got a picture of poop with flies over it in a circle.
Because I can give you the actual scientific explanation, but we can just answer with silence.
You just answer with silence. Yeah. No, it's kind of, and I know this guy is trying to. It's kind of a trolly question, but
I think we are.
To be honest, how many logos have we seen in the last 10 years that have a circle around it?
Well, it's like doing like a short answer, like circle. It's easier for our eye to like focus on a specific point. It's a circle, like
Mm-hmm.
it goes your focus point, it goes everything there, and creates a container around whatever object you want to represent. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not having edges. It's like smoother and easier to understand for our brain.
Yeah.
And that's like
Well, and we almost think of it as a game, because it's a button. You push the button.
oh yeah,
It's
also yeah, circles, it's something like trustworthy and easy. It's something that is not going to hurt you. And so there are like, I think we could talk about like for thousands of hours of the actual meaning of the circle. That, but I think we are at the end of this
I
episode.
think we are at the end. Yeah. So this was fantastic. This
And
was
that
a
was
great.
great. So let's
Great
not
episode.
use Microsoft Edge.
Yeah. Let's not. Yeah. Don't get any hopes up with Microsoft Edge.
Yeah, let's just drop.
Make sure if you do Windows 10, you go through the custom setup. Express setup was great in 1998 when you just had the core files being
Yeah.
put in. But now that Microsoft and Apple and everything else is so huge, you
Mhm.
need to go through the custom site. You need to go through the custom setup and make sure you want certain things shared or not, because Windows is not going to ask you. It's just going to do it if you
Yes.
unless you say no.
And
So
I don't
yeah,
care.
and don't make tables, man. Don't do tables.
So please stop.
This
with
is the
tables.
21st century.
Come
No,
on.
don't do tables. Tables are bad. Tables make you sick and they kill puppies. So
It's make you
don't kill
sick.
puppies and don't use tables.
Exactly. It's totally correlated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's science.
It's science.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us, and
Yeah.
just stay tuned for some great stuff. We actually have an interview coming up with
Oh, yeah.
a wonderful developer, Ceci Correa, and I'm probably mispronouncing her name, but I'm not sure. She's wonderful. I've known her for years.
Mhm.
She's a developer in Austin, Texas, and fantastic person. So we look forward to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's it for this episode. Do you have anything else?
No, that's it. It was great.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, you guys have an amazing rest of your week, and keep trucking, keep going at it, and we'll talk to you next week.